So, well, here we have Mr. Hristo Petkov and Mr. Amardeep Shah. Let's give them a round of applause and welcome them. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, our panel on smart containers and packaging. How innovative are we to meet sustainability goal? This track sponsored by Etihad Cargo. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our moderator, Mr. Reggie John.
We begin the panel discussion, and the panel discussion is on smart containers and packaging and how innovative are we to meet sustainability goals. In fact, one of the discussions that we all of us have at these kind of conferences is most of us have passed through an airport and as passenger, and all of us have a microphone in your hand, which is basically all of us run a television channel. You have a social media account, you have a Twitter, you have an Instagram account, you have a Facebook, perhaps some events that probably that happens at the airport or at some public places, something that does not appeal to you, or you have a long queue at the immigration, probably you take a picture and say that, okay, you will tweet about it, you will share it in your Facebook. That's from as a passenger, that's how you react. But when it comes to cargo, a movement of a cargo shipment, maybe a temperature controlled container that is moving through different lanes, it gets delayed or it gets not abandoned, maybe kind of it doesn't get attention at the airports. The cargo cannot speak, but we tweet and cargo cannot tweet. But I think that's something that is slowly changing because of Internet of Things, big data, deployment of digital tools. And it begins that soon there will be, if not the cargo boxes or the containers, if they don't tweet, probably they will start communicating to the different stakeholders, and there will be communication established. I think that is the kind of context that we would like to have in the highly sensitive temperature controlled pharmaceutical shipment. These are very valuable products. And also see that in the context of what Fabrice mentioned, and I think it has also been mentioned in the previous sessions, a patient-centric supply chain solutions. A lot of things are today biological based. It's like cell and gene therapies. These are highly temperature controlled products that go through the global supply chains. We have seen it in the last 1 year, probably you would see a lot of the development innovations in container solutions as well as the packaging. We have seen the Moderna vaccine, Pfizer, BioNTech vaccine using dry ice, minus 72 degrees centigrade. So I think these are going to be quite normal in the years ahead. That's one part of the discussion that we have in terms of development of smart containers solutions and packaging solution. The second part that we would want to address is the sustainability goal. How do we bring the sustainability goals of the world into supply chain and logistics? Most of us, again, would order stuff from Amazon and other e-commerce platforms. How often do you consolidate your orders? Do you, like, at one moment you think, okay, I need to get something, so you order that. Then 2 hours later, you order another one. By the time probably your Amazon, as you know, probably would have their packet ready because you are a regular customer, and they would understand, they would have entire database or data on the history of your buying patterns. So probably they would have actually kept your packet ready. Okay, this is Reggie would order certain thing and this is ready. It probably would be already got into the supply chain journey. Now then you decided to cancel. There is a cost to it. So how often as consumers, how often do we keep sustainability goals in our mind? Do we consolidate our desire to order things at one go? Does e-commerce companies provide that solution? Of course, if you ask, okay, I need this thing in the next 30 minutes, there are companies that will deliver. But is that sustainable? Companies are there to deliver. But from a consumer perspective, I think it's also time that we look at that. we look at how do we contribute to the sustainability goal. So that's briefly the context in which we would like to have the conversation. And perhaps we start from Amardeep, who is in Boston. It's early morning. Amardeep's really sorry to wake you up 3 a.m. in the morning, and we are delayed by at least about 35 minutes. Tell us some of the innovations that are happening in the packaging, because Amardeep's company, Cold Chain Technologies, is into innovative packaging solutions. Perhaps you can highlight some of the things that have been happening with Cold Chain Technologies, working with the different vaccine candidates. Vaccines have been distributed around the world. So we start from Boston.
Sure. Reggie, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. Great to see all the participants here at the Global Pharma Logistics Conference. So appreciate this. Yes, my intake of caffeine is going to be pretty high today, given the early morning. But it's fun to be part of this panel and be talking to you about everything that's going on. If you think of what's truly happened with the COVID vaccine, in many ways, it's been unprecedented, right? The speed at which the vaccine was made available, commercialized, and the scale at which it was distributed is not something that our industries have witnessed ever. And I think if you go back to what Fabrice was talking about in the keynote, a lot of it was the collaboration, everybody coming together. So if you think of innovation, yes, you think of innovation from a product standpoint. Fortunately for us, Cold Chain Technologies, we have a fairly broad portfolio. We've understood where the pharmaceutical industry is headed. As more and more large molecules are brought into place, biologics, cell and gene, there is a need for more ultra-low temperature transportation and storage requirements. So we've already created a portfolio that would meet those needs. So there wasn't much to do from a product per se, but it's bringing the entire supply chain together. Setting up a manufacturing site, we had to set up a manufacturing site for 250,000 square feet in less than 3 months, hire hundreds of people to make sure that we could get the boxes prepared that we can share with our customers and then would be distributed along. The raw material sourcing, again, kudos to a lot of suppliers who prioritize, and especially in a situation of a pandemic where supply chain was impacted, shipping wasn't happening, freights were impacted. There weren't people there to help clear. The entire industry coming together as one and rallying together, I think, is a bigger innovation and almost a case study that we should be looking at beyond just purely product per se. So, I think of innovation in that context, both product as well as the way we all came together to deliver these vaccines. And, we'll continue to do so over the next year or two till everybody around the earth has been vaccinated.
Thanks, Amardeep. Let me go to Risto in Copenhagen. Risto, probably you must have already sensed it. The panel and the discussion is very air freight heavy, and it's good to have you join us representing one of the biggest shipping companies. And we also know that Maersk is not just a shipping company. They are integrating a lot of the modes of transport into providing an integrated solution to shipping and logistic. Tell us, what are some of the biggest innovations that are taking place in the temperature controlled solutions, particularly from a sea freight perspective?
First of all, thanks for hosting the panel, and thank you for the invitation. I'm a bit jealous of you guys that you're all together and have the opportunity to meet in person, but yet I'm not envious of Fabrice, who had all these hotel issues. My answer is, I'll give my answer in twofold. You ask about how are the customers and what are the customer needs. I mean, it's not going to be a surprise for you to tell you that it's very much focused on the patients, how to serve the patients, how to set up how to deliver the integrity of the product the shippers or the manufacturers are producing. The supply chains as such are very complex and yet very risk averse. There is a huge importance on quality and compliance that we see that we need to meet in order to be able to serve the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical customers, they want unbroken cold chain. It's very important for them to find available capacity in the market, which is very limited in a way nowadays with the whole logistics situation on a global scale. Customers want visibility, traceability, control, which is backed up by a security, a dedicated setup for pharmaceutical products, and they want to see data and digital solutions that enable the logistics. On the other side, sustainability is extremely important on how you deliver this pharmaceutical company needs. And as you mentioned, Maersk has become more than a shipping company. We're an integrator of global container logistics. Therefore, for us, it's important to be able to deliver sustainability end-to-end, from the manufacturing facility all the way to the patient. So when we talk about sustainability at Maersk, of course, we think about the customer needs. We think about our investors' needs. We think about the employees of A.P. Møller - Maersk that want to work for a sustainable company. And we think about the society around us that want to see sustainable solutions. And the only thing that we have on the back of our minds is not how to do it, of course, how to do it as well, but how fast we can do this and how fast we need to deliver those sustainable solutions. The ocean industry pollutes 2-3% of the global CO2 emission. And at Maersk, we produce more than 34 million tons of CO2 per year. So for us, it's extremely important to address the sustainability angle. So one of it is, of course, the boxes, as you said. For us, is the reefer box where you store the product, how these boxes can operate in a better way and reduce emission, but also to reduce emission in logistics and ocean transport, which moves 80% of all the goods globally. We need to think, how do we address this? And the challenge from our side is to build vessels that can consume fuel that reduces emission or is one-to-one of CO2. We need to find fuel that can power those ships, and we need to respond to our customer needs. So some of the initiatives we have taken at Maersk to reduce, to improve our sustainability and to reduce CO2 emission is we have started innovation in new fuels. We're designing carbon neutral vessels, and we have already purchased one smaller vessel for delivery in 2023, 8 bigger vessels for delivery in 2024. And for those vessels, we still don't have the fuel, but it's something, it's usually the chicken or the egg, right? So we wanted to show our ambitions for sustainability. Our ambition is to be zero emission by 2050. Therefore, we went ahead and we invested in those type of vessels already. We want to build carbon neutral products, and we want to push regulatory frameworks in order to help us to get to that sustainable solution in the market into logistics. And one other thing, or two other things I want to close up on sustainability is we already offer today an eco delivery product, which is biofuel, biodiesel, which is sustainable solutions for limited customers because there is limited fuel in the market. And we also see that prices will increase when you sustainable solutions. The overall price of increase by 20%. The fuel price would increase maybe by 100. This is only cents to the cents of the dollar to the product, to the single product. So we have taken sustainability extremely important at Maersk, and we have very ambitious goals.
Thanks, Riso. Let me get Vijay Shetty. Vijay, you are responsible for distribution and logistics at Alchem. When you hear innovation, is it still a big idea that we are talking about when you look at the domestic distribution of your products within the country? Are we like far away from what the dream or the idea that we have in terms of the innovation in smart containers and sustainable packaging solutions?
I think most of this smart containers or innovation packaging, a lot of work has happened on the international side. But when it comes to domestic, I would say we still have some work to do here. Okay. The reason why I say this is, like, for example, from the factory where we manufacture our finished products, and when we move it to our warehouses, okay, in India, if you look at bearing very few, the kind of percentages of, if you talk about compliances, I think in the previous panel we discussed something on the compliance part. Can we name how many warehouses are CGMP or GDP compliant? I doubt we will have some answers to that. Okay. So typically, if you look at Indian as well as multinational firms together, the traditional way of warehousing itself, like the way we keep our products, was something to have an RCC structure and an AC. Okay. There was no talking of humidity level, what kind of temperature excursions are happening, though we had certain data points where we actually recorded, but actually whether that is actually recording the entire area temperature in the right manner, maybe yes or maybe no as well. At the same time, the visibility is like that. If you talk about India distribution, okay, we're talking about patients, being patient centric. Okay, we still have long way to go because our distribution channel ends. Okay, the visibility of it ends when we actually move it from our warehouse to our depots. Okay, again, the question of CGMP and GDP compliant, and from there we are moving it to our stockist. Okay. Now, do you know your distributor or your stockist, how is he storing it? Okay. And from there, it moves to a chemist or your retailers. Okay. And finally, it goes to the consumer. So till the time you are supplying it to, it's under to the distributor or the stockist, it is under your control. But post that, you're blank. You don't have that visibility. Okay. So when you are buying any product, let's say any antibiotic from a chemist, okay, how was it stored previously? Like we talk about, like certain solutions like containers, certain cool insulated packaging, which talks about data loggers giving some data. I think in this chain, okay, the cost definitely matters, but how do we get into that particular area? That's still a gap, which means it's an opportunity for many of us to see that, okay, how do we get there?
Correct me if I am wrong. So we have what we typically call is the godowns, and then we have a little more advanced, which we call is a warehouse. Yeah. And at the e-commerce level, what we call is a fulfillment center.
Absolutely.
So when you look at the where do we, how do we elevate that service levels? Because you'll be as an individual consumer who buys online, I'm fully satisfied. If I don't get the stuff, I can track and trace. How do we elevate that service level in what we are still on the warehouse and godowns? How do we elevate that? And did the pandemic, the question to Vijay, and then I'll follow. Did the pandemic actually give you a kick on the back and saying that, okay, it is time that you improve your systems in terms of
Absolutely. It did actually pushed us, okay. In terms of in the pandemic, it also talked about that the distributor shops were closed. Products were running dry. We were having complaints from consumers who were saying that patient is requiring this medicine. Some of the hospitals were not working. People had converted their regular nursing zones into a mini hospitals trying to buy medicines. Medicines were not available. And there I would say we partnered with certain logistic service providers, including certain distributors and certain chains of retailers, to see that, okay, how do we go about making sure the material is available, the patient is gets the right medicine at the right time. Okay. Also, we had call centers and other such initiatives to make sure that if there is any query raised, it is addressed within 24 to 48 hours. So those kind of initiatives we.
Ravi, how do we change the scenario? Because where is the change coming? Is it coming from the consumer or is it coming from the manufacturer or the distributor? Now, again, I'm trying to benchmark. Or trying to demand that kind of a service from a pharmaceutical company or a logistics service provider, very similar to what my e-commerce companies would or the places where I order from. And the temperature controlled pharmaceutical industry or the logistics is moving from to what we call is a patient centric, where I become an individual buyer of a service, which I would really need to be in that right temperature at the right time. So how do we move into that, and who is going to make that change? Is that consumer has to make the change?
I think, Raji, this is a very sensitive topic which we conveniently avoid to discuss. Maybe if I am allowed to say that, particularly in the domestic Indian domestic distribution system. Generally, when we talk about patient-centric, patient is least bothered whether how you manage your distribution, how you manage your packaging, but basically he is interested in getting the medicine. But as a manufacturer, as an industry, as a logistics partner, it is our ethical stand that we maintain what is needed to deliver the right product at the right time, at the right temperature, of course, the way it is needed to be delivered to the patient. So it is more ethical. And then there are a lot of people who take cut the corners in terms of distributing the product. In fact, in the past, even today also, many of the products, when you take out the packaging and then see the labels, it says store in dry and cool place. What does it mean? Dry and cool place in India, there is nothing. Because the definition of ambient in European nation is different, and definition of ambient in India is different. So if a product needs a certain temperature to be stored or transported, then better you mention it very clearly on it, and then you set up a system to deliver the product in the way it is needed to be delivered. So now the government has also taken the cognizance of this, and then now they are mandating that every medicine on the label, the manufacturer has to put what are the temperature conditions that the product has to be transported and stored based on the stability data. Now it's up to the professionals, the supply chain guys, logistics service providers, to maintain that and deliver it in a compliant way to the patient. So it's more ethical in nature rather than who owns it. And in most sense, it is the manufacturer's responsibility.
Okay, we have heard two manufacturers, two shippers. We have also heard two other service provider. Fabrice, smart containers. There are certain demands put on you as a cargo airline. You got to fulfill those demands for your customers. And you have had a number of recent partnership with some of the temperature controlled container solutions providers. What are your customers asking for, and to what extent you are able to fulfill those demands?
I guess I have at least two levels of replies. First of all, because we're all talking about the customers, and you were right to say that's for compliance reason. I mean, I want to be sure that what I'm going to inoculate is safe. How do we prove that it is safe and secure? Of course, by measuring. How do we measure? Because we can track and trace, basically. And this discussion is ongoing since years, of course. So what I see on the first level is that maybe 5 years ago, it was really passive tracking, where you would have these passive data loggers into any kind of your pharma shipment. You would have still lots of manutention to operate. You would have to take off physically this data logger, then plug in. You would have to download this data, transfer the data, and that would take hours, if not days, depending on the country. So I guess that one reason for what I see, what is important with IoT, artificial intelligence, or the connectivity nowadays, is to shorten the time between the data capture and the data readiness, and so the delivery also of the goods. So that's one element of quickness, speed, which is quite important. And for an airline, that's also important. The second level is purely linked to, okay, as an airline, I have equipment, and you were rightly talking about active or hybrid containers. And we need, of course, to know where they are. That makes sense. But we want also to enhance the transmission of the information for two reasons. First, to share it, of course, with the main stakeholders, as we were saying before, but also internally to clearly monitor and to assess. I mean, what is interesting when we talk only about the active and hybrid containers, where nowadays, well, CSafe, Envirotener, SkyCell are equipped with different kind of technology. And these different kind of technology, by the way, are sometimes a bit tricky. So we are into a discussion of what is exactly the standard. Can we communicate between the different stakeholders or the different tools or devices or system as easily as we wish? The response is so far no. But still, it has enhanced. And it's true that I would say, just take the 5 last years, we are now facing such an amount of data. So the question is, what do we do with this data? How do we deal with such an amount of data? So I was illustrating it just in my introduction, you know, with the integrity of the data. What does it mean? So for us as an airline, this is important. This is very important for 2 reasons. First, because we are proving. So we are IATA CIV Pharma, for instance, certified. In good distribution practice, you say, basically, say what you do and do what you say. So with this kind of technology, you can assess it, you can prove it, and it's a clear evidence for anyone in the chain, as long, of course, as the data integrity is respected. And the second one, and the third level, sorry, is for us, how can we do better? What can we enhance in the future? We were talking before about sustainability, but also one element which is linked to CSR, corporate social responsibility. So we participate to this global movement, of course. And I guess that this time it's not only smart containers, but more broadly, the analysis of this data that can predict a better future. And that's already happening. So how does it work? As I was saying, try to start small. That's the easiest. Few partners working together on one business case, one lane, and then it makes sense. And you can then enlarge, and you can then also provide the feedback, which is super important.
But do you believe that the technology or the solution exists? And can you identify, is there any specific, is a cost factor that is holding back a lot of this implementation, deployment of such technologies?
It depends until which level. I mean, for me as an airline, with Environtainer, Safe SkyCell, and the customer being the forwarder or the shipper, the transparency is full. So back to the compliance level, I'm fully when it goes well and when it goes wrong. So I see it as a value also to interact, to have, you know, this control tower capable of acting live. I know that I'm facing a delay. I know that I'm facing a temperature deviation, so I can act. And I see it as being very concrete since few years, as I was saying, it keeps increasing.
Risto, data is appearing to be the foundation for a lot of digital transformation that takes place in not just in the transportation and logistic industry. I think data is the new oil, so it becomes the foundation. But the problem is that data is captured at different levels. How do we convert that into actionable insights? You are responsible for creating or you focus on product development and implementation of GDP guidelines. What has been your experience working with your pharma shippers in gathering intelligence and insights on what they want? And how do you go about creating those solutions for your customers?
I already talked about the importance of visibility, traceability, and control, and this comes back from the need to have a robust quality management system based on the good distribution practices and the requirement to have full visibility and control. So what we have done at Maersk, we have a remote container management. It's a product called Captain Peter. Which is installed on the reefer containers. And when we talk about containers, and reefer containers are those big metal boxes that you put on the ships, I'm pretty sure everybody knows. So the reefer containers are, every one of them has a remote container device which can record in real time what is the temperature, humidity, location of the container, if there is any deviations or if there is any alarms, so we can address those in real time. For most of the time, for a lot of products, we can see that something is happening and we have some buffer. But specifically for pharmaceutical and healthcare products, what our customers want is for us to be able to respond right away and use this real data. And this is part of our advantage and our operational excellence, to be able to put a pharmaceutical product in a reefer container. Of course, there is power off, because you have to move this container from the terminal to the vessel, from the vessel to the terminal, and that's somewhat of a concern. But we know the insulation in the reefer container is quite well, and we have very few temperature deviations as such compared to air freight or any other operations. So, and this is something that I have been taught from pharmaceutical customers. So it's great to hear them in the confidence they have in ocean shipments. And we're able, with this remote container management IT setup, to be able to track what is happening. Does somebody need to go to the container and make sure to plug it back in? Well, that usually doesn't happen, but a simple example, or if there is a malfunction of the container, we give a notification to a reefer electrician to go and fix that container. So that visibility gives a peace of mind to the manufacturer, to the pharmaceutical company. And this is one way to open visibility through digital solutions. And the next level is to integrate this into end-to-end visibility, where you know what is happening at your inland move, at the region, at the terminal, at the vessel, in the middle of the ocean, at destination, to get the milestones and to act on any deviations, because a pharmaceutical company wants to make sure the product gets from origin to destination with peace of mind, so they can focus on what they do best, develop medicines and look for what is the next medicine in line, and not focus so much on logistics issues and go back and needing to go back to investigate those and put a lot of man hours. So the more integrated IT and digital solutions we can provide, the better. And then the last thing to close up on that question is, I mean, there is also so many solutions out there that we have to collaborate as an industry to deliver one simple solution to pharmaceutical customers, because we do part of it. I'm sure at Etihad they do another part of it. There is a lot of very well-developed visibility or traceability companies out there who do very good job, but we need to integrate somehow better together for better visibility.
Amardeep, a lot of time we look at your boxes, and a lot of us actually consider that this is a mere box, but your boxes are actually smart packaging solutions. Tell us about how you are embedding advanced sensor technologies to provide enhanced real-time visibility, end-to-end distribution of temperature-sensitive products. I think going forward, there's a lot of discussion that a lot of the products are going to be a temperature-controlled product, and I think there is a lot of significance for the products that you develop. Tell us about how you embed those technologies, sensor technologies, to your boxes. Again, that's where how you collect data and you analyze data and provide that actionable insights to your customers.
And I'll build on some of the points that both Vijay and Risto mentioned earlier. I think technology is evolving. If you think of the adoption of technology and visibility, a lot of it today happens in the first mile. You know, where a pharmaceutical company is shipping products over to a distribution center. If you think what happens beyond, from a distribution center to a pharmacy or a chemist, and eventually from a chemist to a patient, that's where today that visibility does not exist. And I think clearly as an industry, we need to wake up to the fact that we need to provide end-to-end assurance, right from origin till the point of consumption. We have to ensure that integrity and temperature is managed all through. And I think that's where we need to step up. So as at Cold Chain Technologies, we are embracing technologies. You know, there are different kind of data loggers that are available today. If you want to track location, you know, temperature, humidity, shock, all of those aspects today are available. And as a company, we've been agnostic to data loggers. as long as our customers are comfortable and they want to identify which variables they want to track. We want to pull all of that information into a cloud database, and that then becomes available to our customer so they can go in and see in real time what's happening with their shipments. In terms of data also, I mentioned three things. I think we are evolving from being descriptive, right? Earlier, we used to get a report at the end of a shipment. Oh my God, I saw an excursion or there was a delay. We're moving from descriptive to predictive. We're now, given some of the variables, tracking weather, tracking flight data, tracking what's going on inside the shipper, we are able to predict if an event is likely to happen. And then using that data to become prescriptive, where we are saying, how can I influence the outcome? Which would mean that, okay, hey, I'm starting to see weather developing in certain part of the region. Flights are going to get delayed. How do I inform my customers to reroute their shipments? So I'm becoming more intelligent and providing actionable insights to our customers. And all of this starts to happen as technology evolves, as more and more data is gathered, and we are able to build, using AI, ML techniques and share that data across. So we see a lot of development in that area. We as an organization are extremely focused in making sure that we democratize data and we are able to provide it to all the stakeholders, not just pharmaceutical companies, but regulators, distribution, logistic companies, pharmacies, and then eventually patients.
Vijay, how often do you have this discussion with your logistics service provider? Of course, your responsibility in the domestic market. And when you discuss with your logistics service provider, and these are certain demands, you have the challenges within the domestic market. What kind of discussion do you have, and what is the solutions that your logistics service provider offers in terms of innovation, in terms of a little more of ability to track and trace what happens in your distribution network?
So when it comes to international, I would say there, when we talk to our logistics service providers, we get a fair amount of visibility when it is reached. We go into their websites, it is linked to our systems, and we have that information. Similarly, in case of a normal ambient temperature, we are able to track via GPS. If it is for the domestic market, we're able to track that. But when it comes to part load, again, there are milestones, but it is not real time. But when it comes to specifically for cold chain, part load solutions are not very much available, or they don't exist, particularly when it comes to destinations from, let's say, Siliguri to all over India, or like say Baddi to all over India. Okay, you have to get it, then that consolidation will happen. Either you have to have good loads to make sure a truck load happens and then you are able to ship. Because we don't have much of the cold chain, the volumes are low, but the value is high. We end up doing a lot of air shipments rather than on road. Okay, so when you talk about sustainability and we're looking at consolidate, I think that's the area where we are talking or engaging with few of our service providers in the domestic market. And also in the international market, some of the shipping lines, I would say, recently we have interacted, there are encouraging results. I think Mark's colleague just mentioned about the innovation in terms of the tracking of minute by minute temperature and the visibility part. I think that's where we are looking to get to.
But to understand, what is approximately your temperature controlled shipment on the overall volume? What would be
it would be somewhere around 15 to 20% compared to the normal ambient temperature.
Ravi, let's bring in the sustainability part into the discussion, because I think it's a big topic of the discussion. It's part of a lot of the global discussion points at very high geopolitical levels. And as I said, how do we as individuals become part of that? We contribute to those sustainability goals. When it comes to maybe the manufacturing side of your, at Teva, for example, you would have a certain sustainability goals as well as the strategies as to how we reduce the carbon footprint in terms of the manufacturing of your products. Does that actually also translate into supply chain and logistics when you design your strategies Is that a conscious effort that goes on in terms of how you plan? Is at the top of the agenda discussion when you design your supply chain and logistic goals?
Yes, I think, Raji, a couple of years back, if you look at sustainability was a jargon in the articles, in the magazines, but I think now we see that it is part of the boardroom discussions, part of our regular operational discussions as well. And as an organization, I'm very proud that our CEO has announced recently $5 billion worth sustainability bonds they've committed in the next few years, which we are going to work upon. So, which is a major commitment towards sustainability. It's not only our organization, but many organizations are coming forward now in terms of working towards reducing carbon footprint, whether it is EV vehicles, automobiles. We have seen many things coming up. As supply chain professionals, I would split it into two parts. How we see or how we have to build our strategies towards sustainability. One is more operational, what we can do it today and tomorrow, and one is near future. So what we can do today and tomorrow is more operational, where we can take responsibility and then turn it around very quickly. One is basically we use so many shipping containers. Did we ever analyze what is the capacity utilization of the shipping containers? We do have, when we digged into the data and then saw that there are containers which we ship with 5 pallets, 10 pallets in it. So basically, this is a basic responsibility as a professional, which we can take it up, improve our planning processes, improve consolidation, improve bringing hub and spoke into play, and then have more utilization of container space, where you reduce the number of containers, reduce the number of vessels to be used, ultimately the reduced carbon footprint. That is one area. Second, when it comes to packaging, there is one packaging development manager within the organization whose responsibility is design the packaging for a product, and his responsibility is only up to a shipper level or a customer package level. But whereas when the same package goes into a warehouse, then basically you need to put it into a shipper, then the shippers have to go into a pallet, the pallets have to go into skids, the airline skids. But who is looking at bringing synergy into all these packaging units? No one. So even today within the organization, we see that there are only 2 or 3 boxes in the whole pallet, the wooden pallet which we ship. So are we not using more capacity, more space, more packaging? And can't we turn it around quickly today, tomorrow? We can do that. So these are some things which we call it as quick wins or low-hanging fruits, which we need to turn it around very fast and support the sustainability cause. Similarly, when we are looking at near-term goals, every pill the patient pops in, basically before he gets a pill in his hands, actually if you look at, there are 7 or 8 levels of packaging. The aluminum packaging, what we see on the strip, then we have the carton, then the cartons go into clinical cartons go into a shipper, then the pallets, and then the temperature control layers which come on the top of it. So basically, who is paying for it? It's the customer who is paying for it. At the end of the day, he receives the pill and rest of all goes into trash. So this is one thing what we need to look at as an organization, as an industry. How do we reduce the number of layers of packaging, which contributes to cost saving, affordable medicine, and as well as add to the sustainability of the packaging itself, because we are not going to use as much what we use right now. So from my point of view, I think these are 2 ways which we can handle this problem. And if everyone starts doing that, within a couple of years, we can easily achieve, or easily we can see where our achievements can go.
Fabrice, you're part of an airline, and aviation is always blamed for the highest carbon footprint, which is actually, it's not the truth. Not just aviation, also the transportation and logistics is always blamed, but that's actually, it's not the truth. But we have seen in the last few months, Etihad Cargo in terms of the hybrid container solutions that you developed with SkyCell. It's not exclusive; it's also available for that, and it's a hybrid solution. Just yesterday, we heard the another proof of concept partnership with Speed Cargo in terms of optimization of your capacity. How often do you optimize your capacity? Is your space going really empty? Eventually, that actually also adds into CO2 emissions. Going forward, what will be some of those priority areas when it comes to sustainability goals as you help your customers to reduce their carbon footprint and contribute to their sustainability goals?
Yes, so you were right to start with this concept or cliche that we have about airlines. Few figures from a cargo point of view, airlines is less than 1% of the total volumes worldwide, maybe 1.5 maximum. So of course, the CO2 emission cannot be, of course, negatively attributed to the airlines. Nevertheless, there is a clear mission for Etihad and Etihad Cargo, which is reducing the CO2 impact. So on the global level, on the corporate level, because as cargo, we are using, of course, the passenger aircrafts. So we have developed in close collaboration with Boeing, the first green liner, where we are capable of reducing, of course, the fuel consumption and so the CO2 emission. But we've been working on many aspects, just in terms of equipment, but also in terms of what can data or big data or predictive data provide in order to enhance not only the CO2 reduction, but globally, as you were saying, the impact that we have on us, basically. So we are working on reducing the weight, for instance, from a cargo point of view, the weight of the pallets. That's one element. The second, which is when you're eating something, you will see that on this green liner, everything is recyclable. That's the second element. The third one is linked to what the technology can procure and provide, which is a better route, in the air, a better pass, avoiding these airflows, which is a constraint for the journey of an aircraft. And then when it comes to containers, the co-development or the cooperation that we have together is leading also in the same direction. I want to optimize the space that I have. That's super important. I was smiling also because on the packaging, there is this positive and negative in a way. There is this common, understanding that the pharma industry on certain type of products, they need to reduce the cost or the TLC, the total landed cost, which is something a bit different, where we can contribute by, for instance, enhancing the mitigation effects, reducing lead times, reducing the deviations. So there is some kind of win-win scenario where you would be capable of having a less advanced, that's not the keywords, but something less costly in terms of packaging, because you know that in the chain, it is becoming, in the supply chain, it is becoming more and more efficient. So when it comes to this cooperation with these container suppliers, as we say, which we consider as partners, there is a real exchange which is happening between the different stakeholders, as I was saying before. And it's available mainly with the airline and this type of containers. So the technology that would use, some of them are quite known, in order to provide a steady temperature environment. Some of them, the hybrid ones, for instance, wouldn't require any electricity, which is an advantage until a certain point. After a few days, you still need something to do. But these differences are also a challenge for themselves. I mean, if you compare the name that we're talking about, it's a reality that the willingness to be good or to be still present in the market, to be as sustainable as possible, is also being possible through technology. Or, on the contrary, is driving or is pushing enhancement of technology. And that is something which is, I guess, beneficial for all of us. Into the procurement, what we see, and I guess it's available for each of us, the sustainability, the CSR also elements are mandatory. You wouldn't see any RFP without a sustainability clause or contract, which is specifically asking for any partners to prove that is more and more participating to the CO2 reduction, of course. So that's something also that has changed just over the last 5 years, which we really see.
Let me get Amardeep. Amardeep, let's talk about your reusable shipping solutions and for the cold chain industry, and how do you see the growth of reusable shipping solutions and the return programs? What is the kind of industry appetite for something like that?
But it's a great point, and very strongly linked with sustainability. I think what Vijay mentioned, reducing packaging is one aspect. If you think of other ways where one could impact the environment, is one, making the packaging sustainable. So using materials that are more eco-friendly, it makes it easier to dispose of. And again, there's a lot of work going on there where we're looking at insulation materials, phase change materials, to make sure that we use sustainable materials that can help dispose of. But the third element is reusing packaging. These are fairly robust shippers, and they need not be disposed of at every point in time. And therefore, right now, the industry is slowly warming up to the aspect of refurbish, reuse. If you look through the passive shippers, about 15% of the shippers tend to be reusable today. So it's already taken off to some extent. And that part of the market, from our estimates, is growing at 20+% every year. So there is growing adoption of the reuse containers. However, at the same time, there's a lot of misconception that customers have around reuse, because many customers think, oh my God, now I'm going to get the shippers back. I have to spend a lot more labor in refurbishing, cleaning them, and then putting them back into circulation, which is actually not true. The way the reuse model works is companies like us would send a pharmaceutical company or a distributor a container which is ready to use. They would put in the payload, and the medication travels a certain distance. Once it arrives at its point of destination, from there, these tend to get shipped or returned to a refurbishment center that our company or our partners own. We bring them in, we do the cleaning, we make sure we check them from a quality standpoint, doing all the necessary inspections, and then we put them back into circulation. So a customer always gets a new ready-to-use box. And that is something that is truly changing the way people have been thinking about reuse per se, because we are taking away all the back-end hassle and saying, don't worry about it, leave that to companies that handle it best. You are always receiving as good as new box, and we guarantee the performance. And if you couple that with the digital track and trace capability, where you are able to monitor temperature, you have the assurance to make sure that my package performs every time. So to me, that's where slowly the industry is headed. I don't ever foresee that all shipping containers will move to reusables. There are certain parts of the logistics supply chain where the reuse model is not economically viable. And therefore, you definitely need sustainable packaging for those aspects. But I would foresee probably at some time in the future, maybe the industry is split half and half between reuse and single-use sustainable containers.
Risto, would you like to comment on the reusable shipping solutions?
The way I can refer to it is we use reefer containers, right? I mean, these are the really big containers where you can put all the pallets and packages inside. For those reefer containers, we use coolant, a special refrigerator that creates in simple terms, brings the temperature control into the reefer containers. Today, the coolant that we use is not the coolant that is used in the industry is not as CO-friendly as it can be. We are exploring possible solutions to replace this. We have a solution that is 1/3 of what is emitted today in terms of CO2. There are solutions in the market where you have one-to-one emission. You emit what you use in terms of CO2. So I also see in the next decade there will be a lot of changes in the coming in the years to follow. A lot of changes how to the coolant that is used in reefer containers to keep the broken cold chain.
Okay, well, I'll come back to all of you for the final closing comments. Let me open up as we are almost approaching the time to close the session. Open up to the audience for questions.
Good afternoon, friends. My question is to Vijay and my friend from Teva. We're talking about packaging. First, the question is about the domestic distribution. This very event organized by Air Cargo India during 2014, early 2014.
Can you be a little louder?
Yeah, during early 2014, the
Hmm.
United Nations had specially, deputed a task force to India and our Indian subcontinent, where lots of the vaccines and the, medicines that were distributed, especially in Arunachal Pradesh and things like that. The report that said at that time that more than 65% of the products that reach, they used to lose their potency. The same thing is happening now. To what percentage are these losses happening? Now, are we transporters responsible or the suppliers are being, I need you to guide us. I may not be a domestic transporter, but we have few truckers here. They also need a wake up call. For example, they may not be, catering to domestic market, but there is something which Reggie and his team will take it forward on the editorial for everybody to wake up.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
so when we interact with our logistics partner, let's say transporters, okay. So we are in direct touch with the transporters and we have certain terms and conditions and the monitoring mechanism is already there. So the control, when we work with the transporter, it is there. Once it gets to the distributor, okay, forward, that's what I'm saying, that the visibility is not there. How is he transporting it? Whether he is also using a similar kind of a truck or he's like shipping it by cycle or by rickshaw or nowhere. But there are examples that we have seen, okay. If you go to a chemist shop, okay, how many chemist shop do you actually see which are AC, fully AC? Okay, maybe in Mumbai and few metros, you would find that. But once you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, you will hardly find that. And that's where I think, as Ravi also mentioned, that patient is not interested when you are actually talking about prescribed drugs. But when it comes to hospitals and other things, yes, there are specific storage conditions, like there are specific products or segments, like say oncology and let's say some diabetic products or some insulin products, where the pharma company also tries to take control into the distribution part, because that is more sensitive. Because tomorrow anything happens to the patient, it immediately hits the manufacturer. So there it has been, it is looked into. But yes, as the need is to also look at the larger framework of how the distribution happens, and the visibility is very much required, which is not there today.
How do you think your industry can bring accountability to this aspect, from your door to, Amul in Anand? What their chairman says, it is from cow to consumer supply chain, which is very secure. How do you think this can be handled? This is not a very small, it is a very humongous problem for our country.
Yeah, I think that's where I would say the entire chain needs to collaborate. Okay, so today, if you look at traditionally, pharma organizations have been a B2B kind of a thing. But I think the moment the I would say the new breed of founders or startups came in, like pharmacy and all that, that was breaking the chain, which means that these guys are actually distribution companies, okay, who actually take medicines from the pharma companies or from the distributors and then reach it to direct consumers, okay, with some discounts and other things. So what they're doing is the margins which is there within the entire value chain is getting passed on to the customer. Country is evolving, and I'm sure over a period of time, I think this was also discussed in the forum of ITMAs and also IPAs, where this kind of discussions are happening to see that, okay, how the regulatory part can be more stringent, so that like the visibility till the end consumer is built up. But we have still a long way to go there.
We are heading that way, you mean?
Yeah.
Ravi, the question I wanted to ask you is nothing to do with cool story, but you mentioned about temperature. We are in India. Which part of the country has weather conditions where our shippers mark cartons 15 to 25 degrees? In Bombay also, we never had that kind of, even today in the evenings when you go, hardly you have temperature, in the region of 20, 25. You go to North India, it's 40 degrees. Why is this then marking being, affixed on the cartons? I had asked this to Ryan several times, but unfortunately, none of you are able to reply. The reason being is Ultimately, a time will come when your cost is only going up and we become the bad boys. Thank you.
Sir, when I talk about the temperature conditions is not based on the ambient temperatures, but basically temperature conditions which we mentioned on the packaging 15 to 25 is based on the stability of the product. So, every product before it is released to the patient use, there are a lot of stability studies which are conducted, and every molecule has got a certain amount of stability data with the manufacturer based on which they get the license to sell. Now, if the stability data the manufacturer has got only for 15 to 25 degrees, because the stability, the product they put it on stability chambers for 6 months, 1 year, on a particular temperature range, and if the temperature of that particular product is more than that, then the molecule is unstable and it will not deliver the required results. So because of that, the temperature conditions are mentioned on the label. So let us say the manufacturer has got a stability data of this particular product for 40 degrees centigrade. Then basically he can as well mention it on the packaging that the product is stable for 40 degrees centigrade. You don't need any additional temperature control packaging for that. But when it is mentioned as 15 to 25 degrees or 2 to 8 degrees, then everyone has a responsibility. As a supply chain guy, logistics guy, the LSPs, transporters, everyone has got a responsibility to maintain the temperature of the product within that range, because the potency will not be lost. That's the reason the temperature is mentioned.
My name is Sona, and I'm from Skyways Group. So the question is to the manufacturers like you, and I would like to know that while in the complete supply chain, many times we come across that there are excursions happening, whether it is carried by air mode or by ocean mode. But when we go to the manufacturers and we ask them while carrying the cargo, and we ask them that why don't you take precautions in terms of thermal blankets, or why spending some money on the packaging, that time to spend that much money maybe by using the right kind of package, that is being refused. But then when it is being carried, the excursions happen, it comes to the freight forwarders or the LSPs that, or to the airlines or the mainline operators that the excursions has happened due to XYZ reasons. So why, what is your expectations from the LSPs, and as us freight forwarders and LSPs, we also expect that the manufacturers also take care of the packaging, because this is your responsibilities while carrying the goods or handing over to us. So what is your take, and what is you as manufacturers' responsibilities onto that?
See, I think I would split this question into two parts. I'm sure we have got 2 minutes time on this. As I mentioned in one of my previous questions, is basically it is more ethical. No, we are producing the product and then we are giving it to the patient. Patient doesn't know whether you have maintained the temperature, not maintained, whether you shipped it by air, ocean, he doesn't know. He trusts your product and then he consumes it. And if it is not delivering the required result, then basically it is an ethical question, for the manufacturer and everyone in the chain. Now, if the required packaging is not been put in place, then basically it is completely a responsibility of the manufacturer, because that is their primary responsibility for delivering the product in the way it is required to be delivered to the patient. Now, what you can do as a freight forwarder is basically develop a lane risk assessment. For our company, whatever lanes we are operating on, air freight lanes, ocean freight lanes, we do have lane risk assessment done, signed by the LSP and the logistics function. We have a quality control, quality logistics team who approves it. Only after that, we ship our products. So even if it is for a launch shipment also, we do follow this process. So I don't mean to say that when you have a lane risk assessment, things cannot go wrong, but they can go wrong. But predominantly, most of the unexpected issues, most of the expected operational issues are known to us. So let's say at the airport, you have the shipment which is on the tarmac for half an hour or 1 hour, so which is known in advance for the manufacturer and the LSP. So how do we cover that exposure for 1 hour is the mitigation plan which we need to work out. Is the thermal blanket enough for mitigating that? Or do we take only the flights which are landing during the night so that the temperature escalation is not so high? Or do we have cool dollies which we can deploy to take the product immediately into the warehouse? So these are the mitigation steps which we can work out together based on the lane risk assessment. And I'm not very sure how many organizations follow that, but as an organization, Teva, we 100% follow lane risk assessments for every lane we operate.
Most pharmaceutical manufacturers, when they start a new product or when they start a new lane, there is a validation being done from the manufacturing side to the person who receives the product, and the entire chain, the entire temperature that is being recorded is being analyzed by a team of professionals, not only at the site, but also at the receiving markets. So it's not something that I just wanted to tell each one of you. There's a lot of technology that is involved. There's a lot of stakeholders that is involved. And I would only request freight forwarders to understand the entire situation. There are a lot of stability studies that go into making of a product. And when this transport validation is being done right across the stream, there are a lot of things that are being analyzed of the data that is obtained at that point of time. And freight forwarders and all the others in the supply chain are being cautioned on where exactly they have to pull themselves up or brace themselves up to deviations in temperature. So my only request is that people should understand that there are a lot of processes that are in place before we decide to transport something. And if there are excursions and when there are excursions, we definitely analyze the entire situation and we ensure that these things don't happen again.
It's a good point, Reggie. If I might just add to what the participant mentioned, while there's a lot of rigor that goes into doing the lane risk assessment, I think we should all agree that most of the focus tends to be on the first mile. If you think about what happens in the mid mile and the last mile, that's where I think some of the challenges are being brought about. And that's what we need to be better at as an industry.
Yeah, I think Fabrice, you wanted to come in, and then I'll take the last question or comment from Mr. Jani.
My first remark, which is based on the question about packaging, is in terms of temperature, we're talking about two types of temperature when it comes to transportation and when it comes to product temperature. And so from that point of view, from an airline point of view, I will adhere, of course, to the transportation temperature, which is regulated. We have standardization, special codes, of course, in order to follow up this. The second remark, which is linked also to what is the topic of the panel discussion, is how do I use data connectivity? How do I connect my information, not only about temperature, but purely my capabilities? What are my lead times into this airport or these other airports? How do I share this information is super important. And that is contributing, by the way, with the exchange, with the freight forwarder, and sometimes also with the shipper, to make the right choice, as well as in advance to say, okay, but bear in mind, you will have break in the chain. That's part of any supply chain. If you want a peace of mind, there is a solution, maybe a premium solution, then you would consider some cost element. But if you want to work on these passive shippers or shipper pallet you were talking about, this is where precisely the risk assessment is being made by any of the stakeholders and being clearly explained to the full supply chain.
Mr. Jani?
Okay, very quick. I just have as a domestic, as a patient, when I go to chemist shop, and my wife one day asked him a discount, and he quickly offered 10% discount. And then as a supply chain professional, I started thinking what leakage it could have. And it's really a traditional model where all this distributor has a 3-4 generation relationship with your owners. And they keep on there, and beyond that, we don't have visibility. And this is not only for India, it happens in the United States, by the way. So it's nothing unique, and the government has to step in with the regulation for all of us to follow. My question to the gentleman from Merckx, and I don't want to, put him in a corner, whether sea freight versus air freight, because he operates both. That would not be fair to him. But I wanted to understand operationally. You operate both operation mode. what precautions you take when you load a sea freight container for a farmer, and what precaution you take when you do it same for the air freight. What kind of SOP you follow? You follow different, you have some different controlling mechanism. And of course, I'm happy if you answer. We had a very nice debate in the morning, sea freight versus air freight. I don't want to put you in the corner asking that question, but you can volunteer if you want.
No, thank you for the question. I mean, of course, we don't want to really compare air freight to ocean freight, because at the end of the day, it's not what's our DNA as a company and what we can offer, but it's about what the customer needs are and their product needs, so the customer can choose what is the best transport mode for them. Ocean freight as such could cover long distances and you can move high volumes. It's secure, there is less interactions, less touching of the product, and it gives you, so to say, better temperature control. However, of course, ocean freight compared to air freight has long transit times. The ability to react to deviations could be questionable, and then coming back to the original question, the procedure, customers understand their needs, what is their product. So I hope you can hear me because I can see unstable connection. It's important for us to understand what are the customer needs, and that way we know what are the off-power periods we can work with. We run trials, we validate lanes. When we load the containers, the pallets or the product in reefer containers, it's very important to see how these pallets are loaded in the container, so the air circulation is enabled, so you don't block the air circulation, so you don't create different pockets where the air only circulates and doesn't cover the cargo. So it's very important to have an overview how containers are loaded. It's important to follow the procedures and SOPs we have in place, because containers, they need to be booked properly. So we need to be aware that pharmaceutical containers, we give them extra care in terms of operational execution. We give them, we highlight or hyper care the execution, and we follow through remote container management to make sure that everything works.
Thanks, Risto. I'll allow each of the panel to spend about like 30 seconds to have your closing comments. Let's start with Ravi.
I think in terms of sustainability, when we are talking about, there's a long way to go. There's a lot of visibility, a lot of focus on our exports because we are catering to the developed markets. The customers also demand it. In fact, it will take some time for us to really start focusing on the domestic market, and as well as have the same standards applied for the domestic market as well, so that manufacturer can have a uniform standards across the manufacturing and the supply chain cycles. I think that's one request and the way forward which I foresee.
Vijay?
Yeah, I would say with regards to both international and domestic, I think we should look at various modes of transporting, I would say cold chains, okay? So when you talk international, it's air and sea, but can we also look at something midway? Because rather than I storing goods in India and then suddenly when I'm serving a generic market, suddenly my 3 months inventory goes out. Can we have something midway to also look at where we can, instead of storing it in India, which is meant for US, can I store it some midway and we can move things up? Or maybe there we will have to have collaborations with companies like Merck's, MSCs and all. And similarly on the domestic front as well, particularly on the LTL movements, I think on the cold chain, if we have some kind of a unique solution where Uberization can happen, let's look at that.
Yeah, I mean, we have keywords over there. I mean, we have pharma. We know that we do that also. The why, which is behind pharma, sustainability is quite important. It's something which is impacting our own life. So there is a lot of purpose, I would say, and lots of reason to motivate anyone in the chain, of course, to work for a better future. That's one element which is still maybe not being perceived enough, but which is driving this enhancement into the cooperation, collaboration. And I find that data tracking and what we were talking about, how can I really use IoT, is still on the way, not perfect, still lots of barriers, lots of different communication, but we are going to really, really move forward. And one example for us is the Hub Consortium, where we provide all of these elements within one ecosystem. So let's use this ecosystem as a model and try to duplicate as much as we can by doing what we do almost every week as a Hub Consortium or Etihad Cargo, you know, awareness session, communicating and talking about what works, what doesn't work. Amardeep?
Sure. Thanks, Reggie. Just a couple of things from my side. One, around sustainability. Like I mentioned, rarely any RFP comes out today that does not require you to provide some information around sustainability. But at the same time, there's a lot of greenwashing that's taking place. So I think we owe it amongst ourselves. Let's make sure that we are doing what is ethically right and we provide, the correct and accurate information to our customers. The second, I'm extremely optimistic about the collaboration opportunities. I thought the COVID vaccine rollout showed how the entire industry can come together and collaborate. And I think this digital track and trace capabilities will probably give us that another opportunity. And if we can create a visibility dashboard so that our customers, whether you're a pharmaceutical company or a patient, can get assured that the medication that they're receiving, which is going to save their life, has maintained its integrity and therefore its potency and efficacy, would be a huge step forward for all of us. So thank you for having us.
Risto, last word to you.
Yeah, I will keep it short. I think it's extremely important to remain patient-centric and remember why we do all this. It's very important to collaborate. There is a lot of players in the market. You can see how diverse the panel is. There's so much room for collaboration, creating better digital solutions, creating better sustainable solutions. And there is so much that can be done in the coming 5 to 10 years and even further down the road in terms of improvements and bringing synergies. So I'm super excited to work in this industry.
Thanks. Actually, that brings us to the end of this conversation. I think the biggest takeaway that I have from this discussion, that's something that I said right from the beginning, is look within. As an individual, how do I contribute? What is my contribution to the larger sustainability goals? If I run a business, how do I run my business contributing to the sustainability goals? I think that seems to be, and there is collaboration. So individually you start doing it, then you collaborate with the other partners, and maybe in the next 50 years, probably we may not be there to see the sustainability goals, the sustainability dreams that we have, but certainly this will change. Like to thank Ravi, Vijay, Fabrice, Risto, and Amardeep, and the wonderful audience that we have. Thank you.